Welcome to the weird and the wonderful with strange bones. That's me. And tonight, as per promise, we're doing a bonks, a dive into a topic that is rather interesting, in fact. Something that perhaps is not so well known. Something which I think there are not that much articles and things out there to really tell you about. But it was brought up. Comrade Curtis, hello. It was brought up because it came up in a topic, and I think it's something that does need to be spoken of because it is kind of weird. It's not supernatural or paranormal, but very, very real. But of course, there's all kinds of interesting stories that go on around, and one does wonder why. So, as we prepare ourselves to get going, let's just cover the basics. Remember that on this channel, we only have one rule. And that, my friends, is don't be rude. If you're rude or disruptive, we give you the boot. But besides that, you can agree, you can disagree, you can comment all you want, you can have all sorts of opinions, and indeed we welcome it, as long as you are polite about it. And that said, we do encourage a great deal of commentary, and we absolutely do suggest that you like, share, subscribe, do all of those really good things that keep the channel going, because after all, without you guys it wouldn't be a channel. And tonight's topic is a little side trip off from the main. Thank you there to Mr. Chadley. It's a little bit of a change from the standard norm, because as we were talking and have been talking for quite some time about archaeology and architecture and all the weird things that go along with it, somebody asked a question about underground cities. Now, you get different kinds of underground cities, as it turns out, and some of them are all the more weird because they are real. And so tonight we're going to do a little bit of a rabbit hole and have a look at the strange and interesting places that you can't go, you shouldn't go, and yet it seems to a certain degree certain people do go. Dante, how are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you on board. I hope you are in fine and fabulous form. Thank you so much for the likes. So, the question was asked, are there underground cities? Now, this came out of a topic where we mentioned briefly that there are in fact underground cities, and with kind of civilizations that in a sense are parasitical civilizations, disaffected people living in their own little culture away from everyone else, but nevertheless reliant on the culture that they have disaffected from. And as a result, you have a situation of a parasite community, which is very, very strange, and which anthropologists are even now examining what it might mean and how they develop and manage to govern themselves, because they do. It's a very, very weird situation. And contrary to what you might think, they're not actually in the really weird, poor places of the world that virtually nobody would want to be in. Rather, they're in the very rich places, but somehow underneath it. So, quite a lot of them are actually in America, of all places. And we're going to have a look at a couple of them and what kind of places are there. And some of them are indeed quite old and count therefore as archaeology, whereas others, in fact, are current. They exist, for example, beneath LA, and that alone makes them a very interesting topic indeed. So, I hope you are ready for something slightly different and interesting. Welcome to y'all, and let's see what we can find. So, underground communities in America include historical sites like the Indianapolis City Market Catacombs, the Havre, Montana underground city, which is kind of different to many of the others. There are also, of course, as you can imagine, hidden government facilities hidden away underground, like the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, built for emergencies and things, and the Greenberg Bunker in West Virginia, which is an emergency shelter for Congress. But then you have modern upscale underground places in Atlanta, Georgia. So you've got a whole selection of different and quite strange type things. So the historical and commerce communities, Havre, Montana, an underground network of tunnels, cellars, and passages developed by early settlers for both protection and commerce, blending immigrant history with entrepreneurial spirit, which is quite an interesting one. You have the Indianapolis City Market Catacombs, which are the underground ruins of the original Tomlinson Hall, a very impressive building that was destroyed by fire, but you can still get inside them and do tours apparently. Then, of course, you have the modern underground network of shopping and entertainment venues in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, beneath the city streets. As we have said, you've got your Cheyenne Mountain Complex under about 2,000 feet of granite. Hello, how are you?
Good evening. Sorry, I sound like I'm 5, but I just have like a question.
Yes.
So like, I don't want to be mean or anything. I just want to like understand what is the podcast like about.
Well, essentially, the aim is to look at anything weird and wonderful. So it obviously will include all things supernatural, paranormal, and all of that, but it's
Oh,
also going to include things that are just really strange and interesting.
oh, that's actually cool. I'm gonna follow you.
Cool. Thank you very much for that.
You have a well, our country it's night, so you have a good day or night.
Thank you very much. I shall indeed. I hope you do too.
Okay, bye.
Cool. Ciao, ciao. So then, of course, besides the underground military bunkers, which are all kinds of interesting for all of the reasons, thank you so much for those likes. There's also the Dallas Underground, which is modern and developed entirely to improve the city. And then Subtropolis in Kansas City, Missouri, which is one of the world's largest underground business complexes, carved into an old limestone mine. So there's a number of different reasons for having these places, but then on top of that, there are the mole people. And what are the mole people? Well, there are certain places underground which were originally built for other reasons, um, which include the ones in LA, where they were built to handle floodwater and city drainage and what have you. But owing to the large number of um, disaffected people for various reasons, uh, they moved underground and now live in these flooded tunnels. Uh, Technically, can you call them homeless, seeing as they have built themselves a home? Very difficult to say. So we're going to have to look at all of them and look at what on earth makes people live underground. So as we begin, thank you again for all those likes. I really do appreciate. Let's look at the top 10 that they have talked about around the world. Now, many of these subterranean worlds have long since become obsolete. Others are fully functional urban spaces. So let's begin with Reso. That's Reso in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And apparently, more than 250,000 people use the underground city known as the Reso network every day. It's a network of shops, restaurants, hotels, galleries, metro shops, and other services that is entirely beneath the streets of Montreal. We actually do. We've done a bit on Area 51 already in a past live, because of course that fits to aliens and whether or not aliens are real. So Area 51, yes, absolutely. And interestingly enough, it might be possible to get more information on it because initially, at least, there was total denial about it in every possible way from anyone connected with it. But recently, a lot of those documents have become uh, public domain, and they now do admit that, yes, indeed, Area 51 does exist and is uh, more than just another storage facility for the military. So it's quite possible that we will indeed uh, do a dive again into that at some stage. Because, yeah, it's absolutely a very interesting place. And it shows that there are a lot of things that are done by varying governments around the world that they don't admit that they do. And one does wonder why. What are they hiding? What are they covering up? And of course, the automatic response from all of them is that absolutely nothing. It's just another base. But, well, that's just a feed for even more things. Um, okay, so Just a Guy says that Area 51 is more private than the actual army. Well, that's something we will need to look into and find out because, of course, there are many sections to let us not say the army, let us rather say the military. because, of course, the army is just one small part of the military. You've got the army, the navy, the air force, and, of course, all kinds of other organizations that are a part of the greater body. And some of them are indeed quite clandestine. There was a very interesting video that I was watching this morning about Guantanamo Bay. And of course, we've all heard of Guantanamo Bay, it's famous. And one wonders why it is where it is. And the answer is it is outside the US legal jurisdiction, which means that the people who are the US, mark you, that work there are not answerable to US law. And you might ask why. And of course, given that it is one of the most important prisons, you can imagine the reason why, or at least guess at it. You can get away with a great deal when you're not subject to law. So, yes, there are a lot of things done by the military all over the world that perhaps we can claim are not as strictly speaking admittable to, shall we say. Uh, so yeah, we will actually have to do a look at the theories around all of these places worldwide at some stage. I think it's definitely going to be a good topic. But let's stick for the moment with underground cities and see what we have now. We know that under Montreal, you have a mega shopping center, easy for locals and visitors to cover a lot of ground without being outside. And of course, one of the key advantages to this that I think has prompted Montreal to do something like this, as you know, in Quebec, it gets very cold to the degree that a friend of mine who actually moved there showed me the local shopping mall. And I said to him, "But what's that weird post thing in front of every parking bay?" And he was like, "Oh, no, that's where you attach it to your car and it cycles the fuel through and keeps it warm so the fuel doesn't freeze while your car is parked outside." And I thought, yeah, if it's that cold, I ain't visiting. So the idea of an underground actually makes a huge amount of sense because you're talking about somewhere that, yeah, you need the warmth right there. I agree there, Jessica. It is quite funny, especially, I mean, I come from South Africa. When it gets below 15 degrees, I consider it cold, cold. Whereas clearly in a great many other countries, this is not the case. So, yeah, it's a great idea. It's 32 kilometers of tunnels spread out over 12 square kilometers of downtown area. There are more than 120 exterior access points. So, as long as you're downtown, you can get into the RISO, which makes it unique and interesting. And I got to admit, 32 kilometers, yeah, you heard that right. So there's a lot down there. And if it's so cold outside that your petrol, which is high alcohol, remember, can actually freeze, then yeah, underground makes total sense. Then, of course, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, also a very cold area in Canada, they also have a network of underground tunnels known as PATH. It covers only 30 kilometers of shops and services, making it the largest underground shopping complex according to the Guinness Book of World Records. So it's just shops rather than many other things as well. There are, though, 50 office buildings connected through paths, 6 subway stations, 20 parking garages, 8 hotels, and 1,200 shops and services. It's designed as a convenient way for pedestrians to get around without worrying about cars, and a refuge from the cold. So, right there, but yeah, I agree with you, not visiting ever. It's absolutely not somewhere I want to be if it's that cold. However, those two are very modern, very upscale, very much in use. Then we have one which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is the Wieliczka salt mine in Krakow, Poland, who only stopped mining operations in 2007 after more than 700 years of production. Each year, the mine is visited by more than 1 million tourists from around the world, making it quite a huge draw if you want to visit Poland. But over the centuries, the mine was transformed from a series of dark caves, as you can imagine, into something quite beautiful. There are carvings, chapels, statues, and monuments, all of them carved out of salt. There are about 300 kilometers of tunnels over 9 levels, with the first 3 levels open to the public. Guided tours can last about 2 hours and take visitors through the accessible parts of the mine in small groups. And one of the best parts is seeing the Chapel of St. Kinga, which took 30 years to build, and every single part of the chapel is made of salt. Much thanks for the like there. I appreciate that greatly. We rely on your support. So, guys, yeah, like, share, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Um, well, it is kind of sad in a way, I suppose. Blaze, the topic at the moment, we're doing a bit of a rabbit hole tonight in underground cities of all types from all over the world and from different ages, just because they're very interesting. And some of them are a little bit connected to conspiracies, as we'll see as we go along. But the ones we're discussing now, you can visit. And they're famous and they're beautiful and they're fascinating. And apparently, if you are in Poland, um, the one in Turkey, yes, I have, and we will get to it because that's one of the much older ones. And it is, in fact, one of the most incredibly well built ones, given that there's no machinery to get air inside and all the rest of it. It's just built really well so that it works. So, yes, Blaze, you have a point. We will get to it. Um, so, yeah, uh, an entire set of buildings and all made of salt. Well worth something to see, I think, if you are ever there. The next one is in Portland, Oregon, in the United States, and it is rather curiously named the Shanghai Tunnels. It's an underground city, sometimes referred to also as the Portland Underground. Um, it's a network of tunneled passages linking Portland's Old Town, Chinatown, into the central downtown area. The tunnels are made up of a series of bar and hotel basements linked together and to the Willamette River docks. They were used for both legal and illegal activities at different times. And I imagine during the Prohibition, you are very kind there, Just a Guy. Thank you so much. But nevertheless, it's wonderful to have you on. So thank you for being on and thank you for all the likes. And we do understand. So you can imagine during the Prohibition that this would have been a great way to get covert booze from the docks to your hotels and bars. Um, and I imagine, yes, it's also a good way to get things around without too much of uh, messing around in the upper busy streets as well. So historical, but somehow practical, shall we say. But they say that it is not a place where people live. Jaden, your boy. Yes, hi. I hope you're in fine, fabulous form, and welcome back. We're talking about a bit of a rabbit hole off the topic of what is the current topic being archaeology and architecture, and we're on underground cities uh, of all varieties. So buckle up. So then you have underground Atlanta, which astoundingly is in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. And it opened in 1969, known as the City Beneath the Streets. And this was one of the first ones that was deliberately put in for modern reasons, if you will. It's an underground network for shopping and entertainment in the Five Points neighborhood in downtown Atlanta. Um, it covers 6 blocks and about 12 acres of shopping, dining, and entertainment. In addition to all of this, visitors can try scavenger hunts that lead to different historical landmarks through the underground. There are guided walking tours that last about 50 minutes and highlight 11 historical sites in the underground. And those who prefer to explore solo can get a self-guided history tour by picking up the brochure. So this is one of the first ones that was actually deliberately done. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that, actually. Um, both of you. It's awesome to hear that from you. I do like this, and I do try to keep it as interesting as possible. And while we do like the very much weird, strange, paranormal, supernatural stuff as well, we try to root it in history and the real world as much as possible. So the next one is actually built in the 1970s, and unlike the others, which were all in America, this and well, except for the Polish one. This one is in China, and it's Cheng in Beijing. So the underground city, I believe, is a direct translation, and it was designed to serve as a shelter during invasions, bombings, and nuclear attacks. It's a very lengthy network of tunnels, often referred to as the Underground Great Wall, and it was dug by citizens, which makes it very interesting. And it covers about 85 square kilometers, which is huge. Um, they were open to the public in 2000, but they were closed again in 2008 for renovations, and they haven't yet reopened. At the time of their completion, they had almost 100 hidden entrances and were supposed to be able to hold nearly half the population of Beijing, which is really impressive given how many people live in Beijing. It said that they were built complete with schools and other services for citizens, and basically it was designed as a way to protect people. Uh, yes, 85 kilometers. It was designed originally to protect people during war. Um, and at the time of their building, first of all, it was fascinating that it was built by citizens, not by the government or anyone else. And secondly, of course, at the time of its building, it would have held all of Beijing, but Beijing has expanded pretty impressively, so now only about half could fit in. But nevertheless, you could live down there and then potentially be safe from whatever war might be going on above ground, which is really interesting as a an early version of prepper activity, if you will. So there is that. The next interesting one is in Spain. and it is known as the Setenil de la Bodegas. Now, unlike some other places on the list, Setenil de las Bodegas is a small town in Spain with a population of only around 3,000 people. Um, and it's not exactly underground. It's built under a massive rock face, and the buildings are nestled into and under the rocks, making it almost a cliffside cave type living, but in the modern world. Jaden, are mermaids real? Well, possibly. And we will have to go back to cryptids again sometime, because the initial examination that we did on the topic of mermaids was that it seemed very likely that they are. But since then, we found even more information that implies that they almost certainly are. And there may indeed be facts to support it. There was a very interesting story which surfaced um, in South Africa, of all places, where they found something and they weren't sure what it was, except that they got it out the sea. Um, and so they took it to the Cape Town Oceanographic Institute and sort of said, what is it? What have we found? And it was a very interesting set of carved bone tools and a thing with writing on that appeared to show that there might be mermaids. And then here's the bit that was really weird, okay? The FBI showed up in Cape Town, confiscated everything, and left. Now, the FBI have no jurisdiction whatsoever there. Um, and how the hell did they even know? What were they doing there? And where did they take the stuff? So, right there, that's an issue. Now, sirens, for the rest of you who don't know the difference, sirens are actually a kind, at least in mythology, just to qualify my statement, in mythology, sirens are actually a kind of bird, um, or bird person, if you will. So they're a very, very different thing to mermaids. Jaden, how are you doing?
I'm good. You?
I'm good, thank you. So,
I wanted
yeah,
to ask that question
yes.
because I'm actually really childish.
Well,
And I told my mother mermaids are real, and she didn't believe me. I told her, what's her name? Mr. Melissa or whoever her name is, mermaids are real. She didn't believe me. Now I have trauma.
well, I think you might very well find that there is a possibility that they could be real, dependent on how far down that rabbit hole you want to go. But most people don't believe. And just a guy, yeah, you might be right. But so, yeah, the bottom line really is that, yeah, we don't know what is in half of our ocean. There was a statement made by a scientist the other day, and it's a very true one, that we actually know a great deal more about the surface of the moon than we do about the floor of the oceans on our own planet, which kind of tells you a lot. And Endless Thoughts has arrived. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You snuck in there without me noticing. Good to have you on board. So, yeah, no, this is one of the things we're starting to discover, that there might be more truth to the myths than we realize. It might not be as extreme as mythology says, because humans have a habit of uh, adding to stories and exaggerating to make them more exciting. That is true. But nevertheless, it's quite possible that there is truth to all of these things, which is one of the reasons that we're looking into this.
I just wanted to say your camera is glitching out.
Is my camera glitching out? It does that sometimes.
I think it's my Wi-Fi or it's like your camera.
Well, I'm not sure because we have actually got a storm that was going over and that is playing merry hell with the Wi-Fi to a certain degree. So there may be that. So, endless thoughts. What do you think? Underground cities. This was something that we were discussing before. Um, so, we're looking at why there may be underground cities. Just guys, skinwalkers are an American thing. They again are cryptids, and we will come back to all of these things in due time. But tonight we are going to stick with underground cities, so we don't get too drawn off. Because in the last couple of lives, uh, no problem, Jaden. Of course, I do understand. You have a fantastic evening. But as I was saying, in the last couple of lives, we've got very distracted away from our topic, and we actually missed last night's topic entirely. So I'm going to be a bit stricter on myself for tonight in that regard. So the next interesting underground city is a historical one. It's in the Czech Republic, and it's called Pilsen. Home to the Pilsen Historical Underground, a rather unique attraction below the city streets that they say is well worth going underground for. Now, this is quite a small one compared with some of the others. Underground city. Underwater cities, I'm thinking is going to have to be one that we are going to need to look into for varying reasons. But for the moment, we're staying on dry land, just because it's got all sorts to it, and also the inhabitants thereof, which is going to get very interesting, the mole people. So 20 kilometers of cellars and wells that once were used as food storage, and some say an escape route in case the city were ever attacked. With it, of course, comes a legend that there's treasure buried in there somewhere, but nobody seems to know exactly the whole story surrounding it or where the treasure might be. Now, the next interesting thing is Derinkuyu in Cappadocia in Turkey. And the Cappadocia region of Turkey has a number of underground cities. The deepest, however, is Derinkuyu, which is 18 stories down. That goes down 85 meters, and it could have held at least 20,000 people. Huge thanks for the likes there, much appreciated. So this was actually built quite a way back in terms of the underground cities. It is not in use. Okay, it had living quarters, wells, storage areas, stables, chapels, communal areas, and more. Full on city. It was open to the public in 1965, but only part of it. And what's really, really interesting, 85 meters, I've been deeper than that myself in a coal mine and in a gold mine. You can breathe that deep. And what makes this very interesting is they developed a system of ventilation shafts that channel air, fresh air, down into the city. Now, bear in mind that this was built quite a long time ago. Let me just check the date for you. So as we said, 85 meters deep, organized across 18 floors, mainly to protect people It was done during a war at some stage, I think. So you could have animals and all sorts of things down there, which at the time were important. It has a very complex ventilation system using shafts that circulate the air around the city to ensure that you can keep breathing. And they say that it was so well done, we can actually learn from it. Massive circular stone doors could be rolled into place from the inside, sealing it off from the outside. It's located in the Nevşehir province of Cappadocia in Turkey, and it was built in a number of stages between the 6th and 10th century AD, which makes it pretty impressive. And the latest bits have a distinctly Christian influence, which show the changes in culture over that time between 6th and 10th century. The origins are ancient, and it served several groups over time and was used as a place of refuge from persecution even. There is a place you can go into to get in that they allow visitors in. But nevertheless, the really interesting thing is that the actual entrances are really well hidden, which shows that here's the picture I wanted. I'm going to quickly throw it up for you, and you will be able to see what I am referring to. This is a portion of said city. Just drop that in like that, and like that, and like that, and like that, and like that. So there we go. There is a portion thereof. And in fact, I should be able to draw that down slightly so you can see the top part as well. Which is really interesting because they've made it in such a way that the air actually gets sort of sucked down to the bottom and then out through other channels, making it possible to breathe down there even without air pumps to filter air through. I will tell you that when you start getting down like that, the temperature does warm up quite a bit and it becomes quite warm, which means that it would be a very comfortable place as long as you can keep the airflow going, which is really quite interesting. And again, it shows a mastery of architecture. Now, the next place is in Canada again, and it's in Saskatchewan, where my friend lives. And it is the tunnels of Moose Jaw in Moose Jaw. Now, Moose Jaw is a bit of a quiet city, and there are two stories to the tunnels. Now, the first story is that they were used as a means of transporting prohibition area booze into the US through Canada. And there are rumors, in fact, that these tunnels may have a connection or have been caused to have been built by Al Capone himself with all the bootlegging, but it's never been proven. But as you know, Al Capone managed to get away with all of his criminal activities. The only reason they caught him was on tax fraud right at the end, and that was all they could do. All of the other things that everybody absolutely knew he got up to, they never managed to actually prove it and convict him on. He was a very clever man and a rich one. So, Al Capone might have been the one that used it. Now, the other reason that it may have been built, though I favor the Al Capone thing, placeholder, yes, welcome, welcome. I approve immensely, and I see you have updated yourself slightly as well. That is rather good. The other reason is early Chinese immigrants that were forced underground to escape negative treatment built them to hide and to run away. So maybe, hard to say. There are a lot of reasons for varying things out there, as we know. So what is the whole story? So a proper underground city, according to the strict definition, is going to be a series of linked subterranean spaces that can provide a defensive refuge, a place of living, a working or shopping environment, or a transitive system, or even a mausoleum. But they must be linked together for it to count in that regard, according at least to our good friends on the, there we go, and I can see you better, Wikipedia. Now, they are currently active ones, there are historic ones, there are ancient ones, and some of them might or might not be open to the public, dependent. And there's all kinds of things. Now, they seem to turn up for one of two major reasons. Either because of the outside temperature, which people retreat underground to avoid, or because of war. Those are the two main reasons for an underground place, by and large. We know that Beijing has its underground one. In Guangzhou, there are 18 different underground networks. The Zhuijiang New Town, connecting commercial basements of over 35 office towers and malls, which is pretty cool. It's not terribly big compared to some of the really big ones, but it's pretty large, 150,000 square meters, which is not bad. We have the Guangzhou metro stations, which obviously do kind of count. And then the subterranean retail tunnels that surround the stations are also underground, giving that more. Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I'm one of those people that actually doesn't have much fear for anything. I just never have. I'm one of those weird people. But the one thing I'm really afraid of is underground. I don't like caves and underground at all. I once visited the Kango Caves. I don't know if any of you guys have. And I went down the Eye of the Needle because we had to. And, you know, we had paid for the tickets, and Mum says, we're going in to look. And it was beautiful. As long as I could put my hands out and move around, I'm fine. What got me was when the walls were just too narrow, and I'm going down towards the Eye of the Needle, and there was an incredibly, forgive me, it's rude, I know, but an incredibly fat German tourist coming the other way. And I just, in my head, I could see myself squashed between the wall and him and never coming out ever again. And it was like, thank you, turned around and went right back out. And everyone's like, but you were like 2 meters from the Eye of the Needle. You should have just completed the thing. And I was like, no. Well, yes, you are correct, Endless Thoughts. And that's why that particular place is so incredibly well done. They they drilled out these ventilation shafts that, due to rising heat and stuff, it sucks air in at the bottom and filters up through to the top with fresh air, which allows lamps and torches and things. It draws in air. And that's one of the incredible things about its construction. So even though it is very deep, you can breathe just fine. And you can have lamps and burning torches and stuff down there. And if anything, they would actually assist to draw more air in. So incredible construction from the 6th century, right there, proving that, hey, there were people that knew what they were doing. Now, this is just in the China region. You've got Harbin with underground shopping malls. The Hangzhou underground mall in Woolen Square. Nanjing has an underground. Qingdao, Shanghai, Shenzhen has a couple of them, in fact, and Wuhan as well, which goes to show that going underground seems to have been a bit of a thing. We've got them in all over China. In Iran, we have as well. Kish, the underground city by the name of Hidden Pearl, was constructed of roads interlinked about 20 meters under the ground, which is not too bad, 20 meters. And this is a modern one because they are planning still the shops and restaurants. Tehran has got a whole lot of underground pathways in the Valley Ersa, which are developing as well, from just the underground stations and stuff into more buildings. And now, of course, Iran is very hot, so an underground like this would be much cooler, making it much better for people. Isfahan as well has got a whole collection of underground shops and things. Now, it's only 300 meters long, but nevertheless, it's pretty impressive. Japan as well has Sapporo, Osaka, Tokyo, all kinds now of modern ones. Singapore has a whole collection of underground things. South Korea, Taiwan. So, but these, as I say, these are all modern. Lots of work to dig hands with bare hands and basic tools. Well, that one in China that's built under Beijing was built just by local citizens. They wanted one because they were worried about war. So they built it themselves, which is like freaking amazing. And it's big enough to take half of Beijing. So, yeah, the older ones, like the one behind me in Turkey, are massively impressive. So, yes, this one is in Cappadocia, as we know. Australia has a whole lot of underground shopping malls and more. But not only that, there's a town known as Coober Pedy in South Australia, which has underground residents that were made by opal miners, and people are still living there. But it gets up to 40 degrees centigrade as an average daytime heat. So being outside is not fun. So the underground just makes it much more pleasant. In Europe, you have places in Bosnia Herzegovina, which have a sports center with 70,000 square meters underground there. with shops and restaurants and coffee bars. And they've, of course, got the Sarajevo Tunnel, which was constructed in 1993 during the siege of Sarajevo in the Bosnian War. In Croatia, the cellars of Diocletian's palace has something called the basement halls, where there are private apartments for the Emperor Diocletian and all kinds of other rooms and things down there for his personal safety. So they are one of the best preserved ancient complexes underground made for the Emperor Diocletian, which is really, really impressive. In Czechia, you have the Znojmo labyrinth or catacombs, again quite ancient, carved out with pretty basic that's pretty cool. Okay, so Endless Thoughts has pointed out that there's the Boring Company, which is one of the modern companies that do earth boring, can do 1 kilometer in a week. That is really funky. I could live with, if it was big enough. I'm not too worried about the falling in on ourselves, but I'm very worried about the being caught underground thing. So, yeah, I'll stick to the mountains. Better for me. Finland has got all kinds of modern places where you can go. And they are building even more. France is interesting because Paris is hollow underneath, and you have more than 300 kilometers of mining tunnels that were started in the 13th century and dominated by the large South network on the left bank, which was repurposed in 1786 as the ossuary, which is to say, where they put all the bones of deceased Parisians and parts of the underground catacombs there. You can go down, and the walls are lined with thousands and thousands of human bones. And of course, it's super creepy, but it was originally actually mining. But Paris kept growing, and well, they kept mining. Then you have La Défense, a major business district northwest of the city center, built in the 1960s, which has a whole lot of commercial passageways under a vast plaza centered on the Gare de la Défense, raiding out to connect with surrounding buildings, notably with certain shopping centers, allowing you to actually run around that whole district underground. You also have the Forum des Halles, which is a multi-level commercial shopping center that goes both up and down. It was opened in 1979, and the underground part extends west past the Jardin Nelson Mandela for several city blocks and within the fare zone of the Paris Metro. So you can get around and join up with the metro and more. It's quite a serious underground. They also have Neuers below the Picardy village, between Doullens and Amiens, which has 28 galleries, 2,000 meters long, of an ancient limestone quarry that has been used since the 3rd century, used as shelter by the populace during war times or when invaders came in, occupied by the Triple Entente forces during World War I, used as a headquarters by the German army during World War II, but now, of course, is open to the public. And 2,000 meters is pretty big. I mean, 2 kilometers since the 3rd century. I mean, really historical stuff. Then Arras, during World War I, the French and British Army built a system of tunnels based on the already existing adits from a formerly used quarry. Scots and Englishmen used a quarry below the quarter Saint-Sever and called it Glasgow, Manchester, and Liverpool. And the New Zealand Army, which was bonded to the British Army, used the quarry for constructing another tunnel system below the quarter Ronville and called it Wellington, Auckland, and Nelson. So soldiers from these armed forces hid in the tunnels for several days. And on April 9, 1917, they popped out from the ground to attack the German troops, which is really interesting as well. So yeah, Germany, of course, has got all kinds of underground things. Several buildings on the east side of the Friedrichstrasse, from Quartier 205, that's Friedrichstrasse 70, northwards up to the Galerie Lafayette, are connected to each other. Businesses are on both sides of the underground street, so it appears to be inside a building all the time, even when it crosses the Taubenstrasse underground. Extensive underground bunkers still exist throughout the city, though most are sealed to the public. All of the buildings at the large Charité Virchow campus are connected via a system of underground tunnels. You've got the Frankfurt am Main underground shopping malls called the B-Eben in Frankfurt, which are also pretty impressive. Hamburg, you've got the Jungfernsteig and Rathaus substations with several entrances too, and with shops that have developed down there. So you've kind of got a shopping mall with a station, which is pretty impressive as well. Munich has got it, Stuttgart as well, underground shopping malls and more. Greece, you have the Thessaloniki, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman monuments, with all of them having underground. Several of them were not only discovered but then merged together. And the Catacombs of St. John and the Underground Museum of the Agora now exist down there, but many of them are not open to the public because they're just too fragile. Budapest has got a whole lot of underground spaces. Ancient Rome had a network of catacombs, ancient Jewish and Christian underground burial places near the city. Naples, many underground chambers and tunnels, and water reservoirs and more. The Netherlands has got a whole lot in the caves of Maastricht and in Maastricht itself, which were used for protection during the war, especially. They say there's about 200 kilometers and 20,000 individual corridors in these man-made caves made from the marl quarries that they started building in the 13th century onwards. And in World War II, they were used to hide large quantities of paintings and things from the Germans, even including the Nachtwacht. In 1944, they started construction on a large public shelter that could have housed 45,000 persons in these caves. The project never saw completion during the liberation of Maastricht in the fall of the same year. Warsaw has got, Russia, of course, has all kinds, but not many admitted about. Spain has got the Plaza de Catalunya and the Avenida de la Leon, which some of them have closed because of it, becoming no longer needed, but they're still there. And I suppose you could find your way in, which is leading us on, because yes, Switzerland, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, absolutely tons of underground. I've been in some of them. Edinburgh has all sorts under the old town. Under London, there's stuff under Whitehall. Some of them were used by the government and still are. Canary Wharf has underground stuff and malls and many other underground things there. Corsham has got the central government war headquarters underground from the Cold War. Dover, Liverpool, Nottingham, and in fact the ones in Nottingham come from the early Middle Ages. Southport has undergrounds and more. Canada we've spoken of with all of theirs. The United States with all of theirs. There really is everywhere. Argentina has got, Chile has got. So when it comes to underground cities, know that there are a ton of them. Now, modern, ancient, all kinds, we've got the lot. But along with that, we now need to talk about the next stage, underground military bases. So these are not meant for people, or at least not ordinary people. And of course, this does include Area 51, because after all. So you have the Department of Defense nuclear missile silos. Now, if you ever wanted to go to America but were worried about nuclear things, do not go to the northern part of the country. Because apparently that's where all of the underground defense silos are, because of they were built during the Cold War and it made the sense. So the locations are known as the tip of the spear. The ability to launch intercontinental ballistic missiles with either nuclear or conventional warheads. But what exactly are we talking about? So, an underground nuclear missile silo. They're in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnow Air Force Base, and more. One of these, like North Dakota, is responsible for all of the missiles staffed by officers, who are responsible for the actual or practice launch operations, alert facility staff, facility management, and they run 24 hours a day. So the people that work there, by and large, they live there. And if anybody is to come in, they have to be brought in via helicopter with military escort, or you don't get in. That's just how it works. Now, the silos are the subject of local controversy because in at least one Air Force base in the northern tier, there was an informal annual protest during the 1990s, and a group of senior citizens attempted to access the nuclear missile silo. They usually handle as local incidents, but the trouble with that kind of thing is when you start getting old fogies breaking in, you've got a problem. I'm just saying. But then you also have the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, located in Colorado Springs. Okay, so this one isn't a military one. It's a secure underground complex underneath 2,000 feet of granite. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers supervised the excavation in 1961 with nearly 700,000 tons of granite excavated. Okay, it served as home to NORAD during the Cold War. It's fully operational as a command center. For those of you who don't know, NORAD is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, Combat Operations Center. and it's been there since 1967, fully functional. It can withstand a nuclear explosion as close to a mile away, and it is probably the only US facility that we know for certain of that can endure the effects of an EMP even. It is used for air defense, ballistic missile defense, combat operations center, space defense operations center, which leads you to ask, why do we need space defense? Do they know something about aliens we don't? Maybe. It's a joint surveillance system, a survival communications integration system. In 2002, it was redesignated as the Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station with the end of the old Cold War era operations. But it's still one of the safest places that you can go to. So it's a command center nowadays, and you can potentially put in easy 2,000 people. So if they ever had to defend the president, I suppose it would make a great spot to drop him in. Another one is the Raven Rock Mountain Complex, RRMC, also known as Site R, because Americans have to have acronyms. It's an underground nuclear bunker close to the Blue Ridge Summit in Pennsylvania, and it was built during the Cold War, as many of these were, as an alternative location for Pentagon operations. There were a number of sites created for this purpose under the continuity of government plan that got its start as early as the American Revolution. So right back then, they were planning for all kinds of trouble. And of course, it's part of the conspiracy theory, thanks to the book by Garrett Graff, The Story of the US Government's Secret Plan to Save Itself While the Rest of Us Die, which was published in 2017. And explores the history of the Raven Rock site and the implications of its existence. How true any of it is questionable, but nevertheless. Nowadays, we have a thing called the the continuity of government process, which is designed to ensure there's always somebody suitable to keep running the country. And this was put into place in around 1952 under President Truman, who ordered federal agencies to create contingency plans to manage any kind of civil emergency. So there are the few things around. So if there was a nuclear war, there are places where important people can retreat, which would be pretty impressive. And we know that, in fact, the 2020 COVID-19 outbreak may have caused a situation where these places were prepped in case the Pentagon needed to be relocated. But not all underground shelters, installations, or command centers are owned by the DoD. One of them, the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, is a Homeland Security facility in the Blue Ridge Mountains, about 64 miles out of Washington, D.C. And that one is, in fact, used by the government. So when there might be a nuclear attack, the president can absolutely go there. And after 9/11, Dick Cheney, the vice president, was sent there. So they are used. They are part of the deal, as it were. But they are not the only ones, because we also need to talk about the other type places and what their implications are. So we've talked about what these things are and what they are used for in the modern world and why they are so incredibly cool. And in fact, along with it, I've got another really cool picture which I'm going to throw up behind for no other reason than the fact that I can, because they're cool. And we like cool. Well, I like cool. I assume you like cool. And now it's run away. Boggery. Look, that crashed. So we now need to speak about the possible communities. So underground cities, great place to go. But what about the cities that were never meant to be? And this is where it gets interesting. Homeless communities living in subterranean spaces like abandoned subway tunnels, storm drains, and sewers in cities around the world include most notably Las Vegas and New York City. These hidden communities are often referred to as mole people, seeking refuge from the elements, violence, and the stigma of homelessness. Now, they reckon beneath the Las Vegas Strip, which is one of the most upmarket, expensive, high-powered areas anywhere ever, an estimated 1,200 to 1,500 people live down there. The tunnels stretching over 600 miles offer shelter from the city's desert heat and cold winter nights. Residents build makeshift homes and support each other through shared resources, but they face constant dangers, including flash floods, unsanitary conditions, and violence. The aid that people try to send down is done by a number of organizations such as the Shine a Light Foundation, making daily contact with tunnel residents, providing supplies, helping them access housing and treatment for issues like substance abuse. So we've got a whole ton of them living underneath that we must look into. Under New York City, there is the Freedom Tunnel, made famous by the year 2000 documentary Dark Days. This is a railroad tunnel that was once home to a large community of mole people, but the dwellers were evicted in 1996 and put into alternative housing. While the original Freedom Tunnel community was dispersed, however, individuals simply went back in. We also know that in Bucharest, in Romania, hundreds of people, many of them formerly institutionalized orphans, live in the city sewers. They form a functioning society, often under the influence of a dominant leader. In 2011, in Moscow, Russia, police discovered over 100 illegal migrant workers living in a former bomb shelter beneath a factory. And in California, in Los Angeles, the old city tunnel network has a history of being the favorite place for the homeless. Now, there are a number of issues that really make this a difficulty, as you can very well imagine. So Mole people. Let's talk mole people. Mole people refer to individuals or groups living in underground habitats, such as abandoned subway lines, sewer tunnels, and flood control tunnels in major cities. Usually homeless, these communities have formed makeshift societies to navigate the challenges of urban life, providing them with a degree of shelter from harsh weather and the dangers above ground. Estimates suggest that thousands reside in these conditions, especially in big cities where the underground infrastructure offers a hidden refuge. Now, they become a parasite community, as I mentioned before, because they come out at night to go and dumpster dive and collect trash, and they will come out to beg. Some of them, however, don't like coming out at all, and many of them, of course, have serious mental health issues, Vietnam veterans and more, that have PTSD that are stuck down there. Life in these places is fraught with difficulties, so unsanitary conditions, dangers from flooding, proximity to active transit lines. They develop a loose hierarchy for organization and safety, but they must still contend with threats from both fellow residents and the outside world. While many mole people strive to create a sense of belonging and security, the existence of poverty, crime, and health hazards complicates daily lives. Various documentaries and books have been done that explores the experiences of mole people, but by and large, they are very much forgotten people, and in many ways, they prefer it too. Now, human societies have existed in underground colonies since ancient times, but they have usually only done it for brief periods during extreme emergencies, such as to conceal themselves from danger or to avoid war. Life underground cannot typically support a civilization, though it can provide some kind of a respite from these kinds of things. They still do need to come to the surface. Um, we know that, for example, the catacombs beneath Paris were used by early Romans, and that's just one example of how people used them, but they would still come above ground. People typically did not spend too long living below. You just can't. We need the sun for vitamin D, if nothing else, obviously. But there are thousands that do try. The population of these communities reached their peak in the 1990s, it seems, and they say it has declined somewhat, but maybe not. We know that in the upheaval in New York, the Great Depression, the early part of the 20th century, a great many people became homeless, and disused subway tunnels provided a relatively safe option with at least basic protection from the elements. Over the decades, the population of mole people grew, and a new community emerged under the streets. Um, these communities literally are parasites living on the underside of the one above, uh, apart from it, avoiding it in many ways, but nevertheless forced to rely on it. And full on little towns are down there. Now, we know the ones in New York City has gained the most interest from journalism and stuff. So if you read Jennifer Toth's book, The Mole People, Life in the Tunnels Beneath New York City, that's from 1993. And in 1996, the Dutch anthropologist Theon Footen published Tunnel People, a book that chronicled the life of people in the New York subway system in a place called Freedom Tunnel. Footen lived amongst the community for 5 months to understand them better. And of course, there's the film documentary, for those of you who don't like reading, Dark Days. So there's a lot out there that you can learn about how these things work and how they manage to keep a hierarchy. Unfortunately, there is a lot of abuse down there as well. The orphaned children that hid down there, being cared for by the slightly older ones. Many of these children ended up in gangs, organized criminals, child traffickers, and ended up on the streets as prostitutes and worse. Because that's how it goes down there. There's not a lot of law, which is a problem. And of course, the other thing, while down there, because you're in an underground, yes, flooding, even sewage flooding, which sounds particularly unimpressive. I mean, drowning's bad enough, but come on. And of course, active subway tunnels are used to move around, and you can get hit by high-speed trains in the dark. But humans are not the only inhabitants down there, which is the other problem, because they are the favored home, of course, of rats, and they carry disease. So you have all kinds of garbage, debris, human and animal waste, litters, and so on. And sometimes it goes so bad that the stench can even reach above ground. And people bring down pets to keep themselves comfortable and more. And as you can imagine, they escape or whatever. And next thing you know, you've got all kinds of strange creatures down there. Now, they do have a hierarchy and a code of conduct, and the way you have to act around each other to keep this fragile sort of society going because of all the crime and theft and more. So it's a very sad situation down there. And we know that it's very difficult to attempt to look after them. And of course, we know that their life is just an away thing. It's sort of sad, trying to find food, building little shelters from plywood, metal, bricks. Sometimes they look after each other, sometimes they don't. The charities take down emergency care kits and food kits and even kits for the animals, where they will give mylar blankets, food supplies, reusable water bottles, flashlights, of course, which is always an issue. And it's one of these horrifically sad and tragic rejected humanity type stories. But of course, they go there voluntarily as well, which makes it even more difficult to try to handle it, because getting them out isn't just a matter of saying, oh, we got a nicer house up here for you. They won't necessarily want to come. And that makes it very, very difficult. It's a sad situation, a harsh situation, and with it comes a lot of questions and conspiracy theories and more, that down there is more than just people. There are things that exist. But of course, and for those that absolutely did want to know, Area 51 is not necessarily an underground city. It's a highly classified Air Force base, but it has a lot of underground facility, which in 2013 were in fact officially confirmed. So we know it exists, but they don't admit what they've got down there. Does it mean that there are aliens below? Well, it might. We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. Would we like to know? Yes. Are they likely to tell us? No. So let's conspiracize. So there are places in the world, like many of these underground places, where you're just not allowed to go. So where are you not allowed to go? This is a good question. I will give you examples. You cannot go to the Chernobyl exclusion zone because, they say, of the radiation. Now, in 1986, of course, there was a massive catastrophic nuclear meltdown at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And the outer zone can kind of be entered by now, but certain places are completely forbidden. This includes large portions of Pripyat, the town that was next to the Chernobyl station, the Red Forest, a 10 square kilometer area that's considered to be the most radioactive area in the world. The pine trees turned red and died from acute radiation exposure. So you cannot go there. The basement of the hospital in Pripyat, you can't go there because the firefighters that went in to put out the fires and to cap the radioactive cause took off their clothing and uniform in the basement of the hospital and left them there because it's so dangerous. Now, they are not the only place. And of course, with that, as you can absolutely imagine, there were all kinds of conspiracies as to, was it deliberately done to hide something? Are there places that are fine to go to, but you're not allowed to because they're hiding secret things? What really went on in Pripyat and Chernobyl? Do we know? And more and more and more and more. Now, how true any of it is, there's no way to know. But they are not the only place. We also have the Fukushima Daiichi in Japan. In 2011, there was a rather bad earthquake and tsunami, and it unfortunately caused a nuclear accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, leading to the creation of what they refer to as the difficult to return zone. It's as of 2024, the zone covers about 2.2% of Fukushima prefecture, and you are just not allowed in without written permission. There are certain places visitors may go to where you can see abandoned homes and stores, but most of it you can't go in. But they are not the only place. Currently, New Orleans has recovered from the 2005 Hurricane Katrina, but some areas were so heavily contaminated that they are now inaccessible, which is very, very interesting. So, floodwaters mixed with sewage, industrial chemicals, and heavy metals like lead and arsenic and other pollutants made certain areas, in some residential areas, hotspots. And now it's too toxic even for normal cleanup standards. Certain historic landfills, like the Agricultural Street landfill, is so contaminated by superfluids that it was already an issue before the hurricane, and after the hurricane it was flooded, and it's now a restricted area. So there are certain places around the world that, due for reasons, you simply cannot go to. And yes, we are getting to a point with this. We know that the Roman city of Pompeii preserved by the incredible eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, the well-known disaster site. And part of it is off limits for archaeological reasons because it's still being excavated. There's still so much still to find. We know that the 1984 Bhopal disaster in India, which was one of the worst industrial disasters, where a gas leak at a Union Carbide plant killed thousands and is so toxic nowadays that you still cannot go there. The health risks are so bad that while they've allowed a couple of activists and journalists to go and check it out, it's not open to the public at all. We also have volcanic exclusion zones. Mount Vesuvius in Italy is an area heavily monitored. The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii is also heavily restricted for all of the reasons that you can imagine. But along with that, we then get places that, how can I put this easily? Well, we know certain places are restricted because of genuine issues around toxic whatevers or more. They're just too dangerous. But there are places that people say are restricted for other reasons, whereby they say that some of these places, it was convenient to add them on as you can't go there, simply because it meant that they could keep people away. We know that they don't allow civilians into military bases for lots of reasons, and pretty good reasons, because, well, it's a military base. But then there are the ones like Area 51, which they've denied too forcibly, if you will, that no, there's nothing here at all, but in 2013, well, yes, we do have underground tunnels. Well, hold on. How much are there, and how much haven't you said? These are excellent questions which aren't properly answered, and this is the problem. There's a lot of places in Russia that you're just not allowed to go to. And they will blase sort of, well, it's too dangerous, so don't go there. But is that the case? We know for a fact that a great many governments like to hide away things. And I can tell you that back in the day, a friend of mine who served in the military at the same time as me went out and did guard duty at a particular spot. And I know the spot well. It had two small warehouses about the size of a medium-sized truck, and an office building, and that's it. There's nothing else there. It's in the middle of nowhere. It was important during the border war because it was one of the waypoints where people could stop off and drop off supplies that people out in the field could come and collect, But when the border war ended, it was no longer important. And the one day my friend is on guard duty and he's minding his own business, and there was only ever a few people that did guard duty there. And we always questioned why, because there was bugger all there. It wasn't in use. And this truck came in and drove into one of the warehouses. So he thought, well, okay, whatever, that's odd. But didn't think much more of it until a second truck, the same size, came in and drove into the same warehouse. And he looked at this and he said, it's big enough for one truck. How did two trucks get in? And while he's thinking about this, a third truck comes in and drives into the same warehouse. Now, none of the other trucks had come out. So he thought, this is odd, and he went off, as you would, and he went and said to, the chap in charge, look, I'm not trying to be funny, but this happened. And the man looked him dead in the eye and said to him, no, it didn't. Now, unfortunately, my friend was one of these types he was a very religious person. He was a great believer that you do not ever tell a lie. You just don't. And he said to the major, I know what I saw. And the very next day, he was sent home with PTSD. And I thought, I've seen people that basically, quite literally, have cut their foot in half with an axe in an accident, and they're given a month hospitalization and are brought back in to do desk duty. I mean, they don't send you home when you do your military service. You will serve it one way or another. And they literally had him home within 2 days and said, sorry, he obviously is not mentally stable. Now, I knew my friend. He was a bit of a weirdo, I suppose, but he was absolutely stable. And I thought to myself, I know he never lies. And so I'm starting to wonder, did he see this? And what went on there? Are there things we don't know? And the answer, of course, is hell yeah. There's all kinds of stuff that governments do that are immensely secret that you don't know about. And they do it all the time. And sometimes, I suppose, they do it for very good reasons. And sometimes they do them for not so good reasons. But they definitely do them. So, is there anything below Area 51? Hell yeah, there is. What is it? No clue, but it's there. I know for a fact that the war effort in Britain, the government officially did contact the British witches in order to attempt to counter the Nazi occultists. It's a genuine fact. Nobody talks about it because, after all, we would never do something like that. But they did. There's a million things that have happened all over history that shows that what you think might be going on probably isn't. And that, my friends, was underground cities and the mole people. And, well, here's the thing. If you can have thousands of people living underground that even most people will never know about, what else can you have, not just in cities, but everywhere? And it occurred to me that somebody was saying the other day that in as big as the cities we have now, there's so much, somebody would have seen something if anything was really out there. And I thought to myself, no, you wouldn't. The very failure of cities is that there are so many people in them that you don't see. I mean, back in the day, it was a known fact that every single person knew everybody in their village. And if you walked in there and you weren't local, everybody knew you weren't local. It was an absolute guaranteed bit of knowledge. But nowadays, most people in the average city don't know their neighbor. Fact. So it's actually, with more people, become far easier for things to get lost and hidden. So maybe it's not that all of these strange things that are out there don't exist anymore, if they ever did, but rather they just integrated a great deal better, and now they live next door to you and you don't know about it. Are there crocodiles in the sewers? Probably. Are there strange creatures out there? Well, Probably. Could they live there without your knowing? Oh, easily. I think that by and large, there are a great many ways to not be seen. And I mean, nowadays, 99% of people spend all their time staring down at a screen. They don't even see what's sitting next to them. I'm willing to believe an entire Bigfoot could sit on the bus next to you, and most people wouldn't notice. It's just like that. The modern world thinks it knows everything, but no, it doesn't. And remember, not only do we miss what's right in front of us, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. And we've lost a lot of wisdom given the amount of knowledge we've gained. So I put it to you, ancient cities, modern cities, they exist. They're still used today. What's under the pyramids? We still don't know. What's on the seafloor? We still don't know. We spend our time looking at space for aliens. They could be here, and we still won't know. But with that, we have reached the end of the topic for tonight, and it's been a fun one. A little bit of weird, a little bit of wonderful, a little bit of strange. And I got a few ideas of where we are going next and what other topics to look at as well, just for the amusement factor around the world. And as we progress along, it may be more or less paranormal and supernatural. And we are definitely going to go back to the cryptids because we have found a great deal more out and seen that there are beliefs out there that seem to almost be historical memory, blah, blah, blah. What is wrong with me tonight? I think I'm losing my mind, if I ever had one. Nevertheless, there's stuff out there, and we just don't know about it. So stick around. We are absolutely going to have to look into more. We will look into more. And as we do so, hopefully, we will find answers to our questions. And if not, then we will find questions for our questions. And that's the point of the weird and the wonderful with me, Strange Bones. So remember, like, share, subscribe, do all of the good things. And just as an added bonus, and for you all, I will put up a link when I do the posts for it. But all the lives that you may have missed, I'm starting to put up on YouTube. So far, I have June, which is when I started with these lives, all up. And I will next start working on July's videos and so on until we catch up with today. So all sorts of lives available there for you to go and look at and comment on and more as per your preference. But until then, I shall bid you all good night and offer you my heartfelt sleep well, sleep sweet, and sleep deep. But remember, sleep with one eye open and keep that holy object near at hand, and possibly a baseball bat too, just in case, 'cause you never know. One of those many, many strange things that go bump in the night might potentially go bump for you. Good night.